What's going on, guys? It's Kate McCutcheon, your host of TheAgSpace, and today I get to interview a man that has 17 plus years in the winery industry, and he's going to teach us all the things he has learned from every job he has worked in the grape to glass industry. But before we get into that, I'm going to see how many types of grapes I can name. You ready? The red one, the green one, raisins, wine grapes. That's all I got.
All right, Mr. Smith, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jeffrey Smith. I've worked in the wine industry since 1996. I started out as a truck driver and then worked at Clos de Bois for a season and kind of got the fever. I worked from there. I went to a winery by the name of Root Cellars, where I was grower relations for a year, and then after that, I transferred to Fry Chrono, and I worked there for 19 years. I did everything from cellar work to winemaking to administration and logistics for both crush, fermentation, bottling, the whole bit from what we call grape to glass.
Okay, so what do you mean by grow relations? What is that? What does that mean?
Grower relations is where you act as the intermediary between the owner of the winery and the vineyard ranchers or the vineyard people that are growing the grapes, and you negotiate contracts, either short or long-term contracts, and price, and you monitor those vineyards and make sure those vineyards are on track and that they meet their sugar expectations upon picking and harvest, so that both parties are happy. The owner of the winery gets the fruit that they want at the bricks that they want, and the ranch owner gets his money that's deserved to him for product produced.
So what would you say is the challenges of getting these contracts? How long do you say that they would last?
Some of the contracts were already in place, and then some of the contracts you're looking for new vineyards to buy fruit from, and so you're trying to negotiate the price there in terms of what the standard is, what they call Sonoma County average, and you're trying to negotiate, and you don't know necessarily the track record of that vineyard, so you have to have a good eye for vineyard in terms of slope and soil exposure and sun exposure and what grapes you want to grow where, and hopefully you make good decisions on that, and you can find and sign vineyards. And if you like the fruit, then you look at signing them for longer term contracts. And for the vineyards that you already have contracts, that's just about maintaining the relationship that you already have. If the grapes are up to your standards, and if they're not, then you talk with the grower and say, hey, we'd like you to make some adjustments. Can you do that for us? And there's that interplay going on there.
What would you say is probably like the biggest thing you would see when you're going out and you're looking at this? What do you think would probably be like the most that you've seen, like that would like turn you off from?
Well, the main thing, it depends on the season. So in the early part of the season, you're looking for mildew, which happens. And so a grower has to be really diligent not to get mildew on the vineyard, because that you get that, it scars the leaves and it scars the skin tissue of the grapes. And then the skins don't develop properly and you get immature qualities. So that would be one phase. During the summer, you're looking for sunburn, heat exhaustion or overheat exposure. And so you're looking for the grower to properly irrigate his vineyard and fertilize his vineyard and manage the vineyard so that it can weather the hot season. And then in the fall, you're looking for several numbers. You're looking for sugar, first of all, but you're looking for a proper pH and a total acid balance that kind of indicates total maturity so that you can call the pick.
Okay, so earlier you were talking about the grape to glass process. Can you kind of like walk me through what that means?
It's to begin with, it's all the planning that goes into your board that you have for the week. You have vineyards that are scheduled for the week, and they're either on schedule to be picked that day or they're pushed back. You're writing work orders that for the day, let's say you're picking 100 tons, and you write those corresponding work orders to the various tanks that you have available to you. And then that fruit comes in, you process it, and then the information is entered into the system, and that fruit is designated to those tanks. The winemaking team can then look at that fruit. The lab is out taking analysis and samples of the juice from those tanks and running analysis to provide the winemaker so that they can make the proper fermentation decisions. And then after that, the wine goes through fermentation for about 5 to 7 days. Then the winemakers are constantly trying the wine at a tank until they can make a decision to drain and press. That juice is then drained and pressed to other tanks. And then once it's done and completely dry, no sugar left, then the corresponding work orders for filling barrels is then done. You have both new and used barrels that you are choosing to create a good blend for the wine that's in those barrels. And then those barrels are filled and put in the cellar for to wait and to age until a further date when they're bottled.
Okay, so how many grapes out of 1 ton would you say, how many bottles would that make?
If you have a ton of fruit, that makes about 75 cases of wine.
All right. So can you walk me through the process of, so after they're picked, can you walk me through the process of that till they get bottled?
Well, we discussed the fermentation. So they've been crushed, they've been fermented, it's been drained and pressed, it's been barreled down, and it's been aged in the cave. And then depending on the variety, the whites are usually bottled within the next calendar year, and your lighter bodied reds like Zinfandel and Sangiovese, those are as well. They're usually bottled within 12 months after vintage. So the winemakers taste the various wines and the blender wines that you might go in it. For example, if you have a Sangiovese, you might blend in a little bit of Petit Verdot or Petit Syrah or Malbec to give it a little bit more color and a little bit more richness. Those work orders are written. The seller executes that work order. Those blends are put into tank. We cross blend them again to make sure all the tanks are homogeneous and exactly the same. And then once that's done, you stabilize the wine to make sure that you don't have any unstable tartrates or tartaric acid that precipitates out of the wine. Once you know you have that, then you can filter it. And once it's filtered, then you schedule it for bottling. And once it's bottled, it goes to the warehouse, and then it's scheduled to go out to our main warehouse after that.
What's the process to get it in the bottles?
The physical process, the bottling crew is a crew of 8 guys. So you have everyone. You have the person dumping the glass. You have the mechanic and the supervisor overseeing all the raw materials, which is glass, labels, corks, and foils, and making sure each machine is applying and all the application is correct and aesthetically pretty, because the wine has to be, the label can't be wrinkled, the foils can't be wrinkled, they can't be crooked. So you're constantly maintaining that. And then you have your packers, and then you have your palletizer guy that's organizing the pallet, and you have your 2 drivers. One's bringing glass and one's taking away full pallets. And so that's essentially the bottling process.
So what determines the price of each bottle of wine?
It's basically color, concentration, texture, viscosity. And if you put that on a scale from 1 to 10, let's say if the wine has all of those characteristics at an 8 or above, that would be considered a reserve. And if it's between 6 and 8, that would be considered, let's say, your flagship wines. And then if it's 6 and, let's say, between 3 and 6, that would be your lower tier brands that would go into those. And anything 3 and below, you would consider bulking out and not bottling.
Okay, so how do the vineyards determine the picking date?
Well, that's a decision between the winemakers and the vineyard managers that are, so the winemakers are trying to figure out via lab analysis how to and when to pick the vineyard. But the vineyard managers are on the other end. They're trying to figure out the logistics on their trucks and their crews and where they're at and where they need to be. And you're constantly having to stage equipment. So you have your tractors and your picking bins and your crews, and you've got all your trucks, and you have to move all this equipment around to your various vineyards. And so it's really important, the logistics between winemaking and the lab and vineyard management, to work together to try and bring in all this fruit that is coming in at different ripenesses and different locations, and the logistics of all that. So there's a little give and take involved in terms of when you can get to certain blocks. And so the vineyard manager will tell you, they'll tell the winemaker, they'll say, listen, these blocks that you want me to pick, I can't pick those till next Tuesday. You want to pick today, I can't pick them till next Tuesday. Or they might say, well, if you hold off on these blocks here, I can get to those when you want. But you got to give me something. You gotta pull something off the schedule, and we can put something on the schedule. So it's about give and take and teamwork and working together.
Okay. So do you think teamwork is important throughout this whole process?
Yes, it's absolutely essential. Tensions get high and tempers flare. It's harvest, but in the end, we're all on the same team. We're all trying to, get the fruit in as ripe and as perfect as possible. And so teamwork is absolutely essential. There's so many things to do, and there's only a finite amount of people to do it. And so you have to work together to get it done.
So what would you say is probably the biggest challenge throughout this whole process?
It's fatigue. It's the process of having to deal with working so many hours and so many days in a row with no days off. It wears on you, and you're sleep deprived, and you're trying to focus and with almost no sleep, and the fruit just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming, and it just doesn't stop. And you have to just keep your head down, stay focused on the task at hand. And when you have time to look at the bigger picture, you do that. But boom, you get back to the task at hand, and you stay focused, and until you go home and get as little sleep as you can and go back to work the next day. So,
Okay, so what's your favorite kind of wine?
my favorite kind of wine depends on the season. So in the spring, I like whites, and in the summer I like whites, and I really like beer. In the fall, I like reds. I like in your heartier meals that you'd make in the fall, stews and also bucco and things of that nature. That's when you drink the heartier reds like Cabs and Syrahs and Merlots. So it's very seasonal for me.
So what's kind of your grape preference?
I love Zin. I think it's the heritage grape of Sonoma County. It's sad because a lot of it's being pulled because Zinfandel just is seeming to lose popularity, and it's a very sad thing because I think it's just a great grape and just so delicious and so much fun to drink. But yeah, Zins and Pinots, and those are some of my favorites.
I think that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Smith.
You're welcome.
Today, Mr. Smith taught us his experiences and his morals in working in the grape to glass industry. And I think that it was a great experience getting to learn from him. And I'll see you guys next time.